Shut your damn mouth! Who do you think you are to talk to my mother like that? Derek roared, and before I could even process the sound of his voice, his hand struck my face with a force that sent me stumbling backward into the edge of the dining table. For a second, the world blurred, just light, breath, and shock. Marlene stood behind him with her arms folded, her lips curling into a small, victorious smirk, as if she had been waiting for this moment the entire time. But what happened 15 minutes later was something neither of them expected, least of all Derek. Brace yourself, because what you are about to hear is not just a story, but a reckoning. Comment below where you are watching, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. The silence inside our Houston townhouse had always felt delicate, like a thin layer of mist floating over the bayou just before sunrise. Quiet, weightless, and easy to disturb. It was built from the soft rhythm of my son Isaiah's breathing as he slept in his crib, the low hum of the air conditioning fighting the Texas heat, and the distant tick of the kitchen clock. I sat on the edge of the sofa, barely daring to shift my weight. At 6 months old, Isaiah was my entire gravity, the center around which every waking thought and exhausted breath of mine now orbited. I looked down at my hands resting in my lap. Once, not so long ago, they were always manicured. Clean white polish, soft skin, cuticles trimmed. As a graphic designer, my hands had been my tools, shaping colors, textures, and lines. But now, the nails were short and uneven, the skin dry from too much washing and too little rest. Motherhood had changed my hands, but it had changed far more than that. It had reshaped my days, rearranged my priorities, quieted parts of me I used to think were permanent. Isaiah's tiny world had become mine. The bedroom door creaked open softly, pulling me from my thoughts. Derek stepped out, tall and composed in the crisp shirt he always wore to his job at the energy firm downtown. He looked like someone from a different universe entirely. A neat, structured world of office lights and agendas and morning commutes. He moved toward us on quiet feet. "Is he asleep?" he whispered. "Yes," I murmured. He finally settled. He was restless for almost an hour. Derek leaned down and kissed the top of my head. His cologne, cedar, musk, something expensive and confident, brushed against me, reminding me of the man he used to be. The one I married, the one who once held my face gently in his hands, the one who said we were a team. "You look tired," he said softly. "Maybe you should go stay with your mom this weekend. Rest a little. I can handle Isaiah." "Not right now," I said. "Your mother just got here, and Talia, too." At that, relief crossed his face like a shadow moving quickly across the floor. His mother, Marlene, had arrived from Louisiana nearly a week earlier. She had come, in Derek's words, to help. But I had not felt helped, not once. Her presence filled the house, rearranging the air, imposing itself on every corner. And now, with Talia, the sister who always seemed to look at me the way someone might look at a stain that wouldn't come out. Things had only grown heavier. That evening, the four of us sat in the kitchen, though I barely touched my food. Marlene stirred her coffee with slow, dramatic movements, sighing between sentences. I don't know how you young people live like this, she said. No structure, no backbone. When I raised Derek and Talia, I worked 2 jobs and still had a spotless house and perfectly behaved children. Aaliyah, you need someone to teach you how to run a home. My fork scraped against the plate, though I hadn't eaten anything. I kept my expression still, my voice silent. Arguing only fed her. I mean, look at her, Talia chimed in, her eyes coolly scanning me. She looks overwhelmed by the smallest things. Some women aren't cut out for motherhood. Nothing wrong with admitting that. Derek didn't lift his eyes from his phone. His silence felt like a betrayal and an answer in one. Marlene continued, a mother should keep herself up. A clean face, a pressed dress, some makeup. A man wants a woman who tries. My chest tightened. I wanted to say that I hadn't slept more than 4 hours in months, that I barely found the time to brush my hair. But exhaustion silenced me, and silence had become my only defense. After dinner, Marlene stepped out onto the back patio. Within seconds, the sharp odor of cigarette smoke seeped through the screen door. My breath caught. I shut the door firmly, but the scent lingered. It always lingered. Derek did not notice, or pretended not to. Later, once the house was quiet, I stood beside Isaiah's crib and traced a finger along his cheek. His tiny eyelids fluttered. His breath hitched softly in sleep. Everything about him felt impossibly vulnerable. For him, I could endure sleeplessness, judgment, anything. But for him, I also needed to recognize danger, even the softest kind. Where was the line between patience and neglect? Between peacekeeping and surrender? The city lights flickered through the window, and I found myself wondering if every mother eventually reached this point. This small, trembling realization that the home she lived in was not the one she had imagined. Something had shifted in our house when Marlene arrived. Something sharp, something smoky, something corrosive. And, though I couldn't see it clearly yet, I felt its outline forming in the dark. And soon, it would break. The next morning arrived not with sunlight, but with the restless whimpering of Isaiah before dawn. His cries were small, wavering sounds, the kind that pulled me up from sleep even before consciousness fully returned. By the time I carried him into the living room, the sky outside was still a deep navy, and the quiet hum of the refrigerator felt louder than usual. I held him against my shoulder, swaying gently, letting his warmth settle into my bones. He quieted gradually, his soft breaths brushing my neck. And in that fragile silence, I felt, for a moment, like the world was still something I could manage. But the illusion dissolved quickly. The thud of footsteps above us signaled that Marlene was awake. She always rose late, but whenever she did emerge, she descended into our morning like a supervisor, stepping onto the floor of a factory she believed she owned. I braced myself even before I heard her voice. "Morning," she said, though it wasn't a greeting so much as an evaluation. Her eyes swept over me, my messy bun, my oversized t-shirt, the fact that I hadn't even made coffee yet. "Lord, Aaliyah, you look like you've been dragged through the mud." "I was up early with Isaiah," I said softly, trying to keep my voice neutral. "A good mother sets routines," she replied, walking past me to the counter. "Babies learn discipline when their mothers have discipline." I didn't answer. The silence between us always expanded in the kitchen, like steam rising from the sink. Quiet, warm, but suffocating in its persistence. She reached for the coffee canister, frowning. "You didn't buy the brand I asked for?" "I didn't have time yesterday," I said. Isaiah was, "You always have an excuse," she cut in. When I raised Derek, I didn't sit around waiting for the day to manage itself. I got things done. Isaiah stirred in my arms, sensing the tension in the room, and I instinctively held him closer. A moment later, Talia appeared in the doorway. She always carried herself with a confidence that felt sharpened, like she needed everyone to feel the presence of her opinions. "Mom," she said, stretching lazily, "I swear, this house is depressing. No music, no breakfast prepared, nothing smells like home." "It's not her fault," Marlene said, though her tone carried no sympathy for me. "Some women just aren't natural homemakers." Talia's gaze shifted toward me. "You know, Aaliyah, it wouldn't hurt to let Mom show you a few things. She practically raised us by herself." "I'm doing the best I can," I replied quietly. "Well," Talia shrugged, "maybe your best needs some work." Derek entered then, dressed and ready for work, tie perfectly aligned. He walked into the tension as though he didn't feel it. Or maybe he had trained himself not to. He kissed Isaiah's forehead, but didn't look long enough to notice the new shadows under my eyes. "Morning," he said to all of us. "Your wife still hasn't picked up my coffee," Marlene announced. Derek sighed, rubbing the bridge of his nose. "Aaliyah, it's a simple thing. Could you just handle it today?" "I will," I said. "I just haven't had a chance." "Make time," he replied gently but firmly, placing his laptop bag on the chair. Those two words, "make time," settled into me like a weight, as if time was something I owned freely, as if 6 months of constant feeding, rocking, soothing, pumping, cleaning, and praying for a few hours of sleep were simply a matter of poor scheduling. As if my exhaustion was a character flaw. The silence that followed felt accusatory, even though no one said anything more. When Derek left for work, the house shifted again. Without him, the air felt heavier, not lighter. I fed Isaiah, dressed him for the day, and prepared the diaper bag. Marlene hovered nearby, observing, critiquing silently. Talia sat on the couch scrolling through her phone, sighing every few minutes, as though she was being inconvenienced by our existence. "I'm taking Isaiah for a walk," I said. "Good," Marlene responded. "Fresh air does him more good than being stuck in this house." "Make sure he's dressed warmly," Talia added, even though it was a mild morning and Isaiah was already layered. I didn't argue. I never did. It never mattered. Outside, the world felt kinder, spacious, breathable, unfiltered by judgment. The trees lining our street swayed in the soft Houston breeze, and the distant rumble of traffic from Highway 290 blended into a low, steady hum. I pushed Isaiah's stroller toward the small neighborhood park, letting my steps fall into a quiet rhythm. Everything inside me felt stretched thin, like fabric pulled too tight. I wondered how many women, how many mothers, walked their children through parks just like this, whispering silent fears into the air because there was no room for their voices at home. I wondered how many had mothers-in-law whose presence felt like a slow-moving storm. When I returned home, I could smell it before I saw anything. The faint, unmistakable scent of cigarette smoke. It clung to the doorway like an unwelcome guest. My stomach tightened as I opened the door. Marlene sat on the patio, cigarette in hand. The screen door cracked open, letting the smoke drift directly toward the living room, where Isaiah would soon lie down for his nap. "Could you close the door, please?" I asked cautiously. She turned her head slightly. "I'm outside." "The smoke is blowing inside." "It'll air out," she said dismissively. "It's not good for Isaiah." "Oh, Lord," she groaned, waving her hand. "You're one of those fragile mothers." I exhaled slowly, holding Isaiah tighter. "It's not about me. It's about him." "Children are tougher than you think," she said. "Mine grew up around smoke just fine." Talia emerged from the kitchen then, opening a soda can with a loud crack. "Is this about the smoke again? Aaliyah, seriously? Mom's been smoking longer than you've been alive. Stop making everything dramatic." "I'm not—" "Yes, you are," she interrupted. "I swear, Derek is too patient." I felt something inside me settle, not resolve, not fury. Something quieter, a knowing, a recognition, a line slowly beginning to form. I moved past them without another word, carried Isaiah into his room, and closed the door gently behind us. As I laid him in his crib, watching his eyelids flutter as he drifted toward sleep, the air thick with the fading remnants of smoke, I told myself, something I had not dared to acknowledge until that moment. This was no longer a discomfort. It was a threat. And mothers do not ignore threats. Not for peace, not for politeness, not for anyone, not even family. For the next 2 days, I tried to ignore the unease that had begun circling me like a mosquito in a quiet room. Persistent, invisible, impossible to ignore. I cleaned, cooked, walked Isaiah, and pretended that the smell of smoke drifting into the hallway didn't twist my stomach into knots. I told myself that maybe I was imagining it. Maybe I had become too sensitive. Maybe new motherhood had turned fear into a reflex. But each time Isaiah's breath hitched in his sleep, or he rubbed his eyes, I found myself leaning in closer, wondering if something microscopic, something toxic, something preventable was sinking into his tiny lungs. On the third afternoon, Talia insisted on staying in the living room with Isaiah, while I took some time to get myself together. Her voice carried that familiar mix of pity and judgment that always made me feel smaller than I actually was. I didn't want to leave him alone with her, not because she would hurt him, but because she didn't believe danger existed in the same places I did. Still, I stepped into the bedroom to fold laundry, hoping the small separation would offer me a moment to think. But the moment dissolved quickly. As I entered the hallway again, I smelled it. Faint, acrid, unmistakable. Cigarette smoke drifting under the patio door, blending quietly into the living room air like it owned the place. Talia was sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone, while Isaiah played in his bouncer nearby. The patio door was cracked open. Outside, Marlene leaned against the railing, a cigarette between her fingers, exhaling directly toward the gap in the door. I froze in the doorway. "Talia," I said carefully, "Could you close the door? The smoke is getting inside." She looked at me as though I had interrupted something important. "She's outside." "Yes, but the smoke?" "Girl," she interrupted, turning fully toward me, "you're making a big deal out of nothing. Babies aren't made of glass." I felt heat spread slowly across my chest. Not anger exactly, but a tightness, a recognition of something my body understood before my mind did. "I can smell it," I said. "And if I can smell it, Isaiah can too." "So what?" she replied. "My son spent nights at Mom's house when he was a toddler. She smoked inside all the time. He's fine." Her words struck something deep and cold inside me. The exact echo of something I had come across once during a late-night scroll of a parenting forum. Another mother describing how her in-laws smoked in their house, how the smell clung to her baby's hair and clothes, how she felt sick thinking about what she had exposed her child to. I remembered the way that mother wrote, "If I can taste the smoke in my throat, then my baby is breathing it too." That line had lodged itself somewhere inside me. And now, hearing Talia, it rose again like a warning, resurfacing from the past. "I don't want him breathing that," I said quietly. Talia let out a sharp laugh. "Well, unless you plan to live inside a bubble, life's going to touch him sometimes. You can't protect him from everything." She didn't understand that I wasn't trying to protect him from everything, just from what I could see, smell, and feel seeping under the door in real time. I walked to the patio, sliding the door closed firmly. Marlene turned her head, scowling. "What's your problem?" she called from outside. "No problem," I said. "I'm just keeping the smoke out." "You ought to thank me for helping with your child, instead of acting like some dictator," she muttered, turning back to her cigarette. Inside, Isaiah fussed slightly in his bouncer. His eyes watered from something I couldn't see, but could feel in my throat. His little chest rose and fell with uneven breaths. Not alarming yet, but enough to hit the fear center of my brain. I scooped him up and held him close. Talia rolled her eyes. "He's fine. You're paranoid." Paranoid. That was the word people used when they didn't think a mother's instinct was legitimate. That was the word used to silence women like me. Women who smelled danger before they could explain it. Who recognized small threats that others found invisible. Derek came home earlier than usual that day, stepping into the house just as Marlene crushed her cigarette into the patio ashtray. He greeted his mother warmly before glancing at me. "Everything okay?" I didn't want to fight, not right away, but I also couldn't keep pretending nothing was happening. "Isaiah was breathing smoke," I said simply. Derek sighed. Long, irritated, the sigh of a man who feels cornered by words he doesn't want to hear. "Aaliyah," he began. She was outside. Talia left the door open. The smoke was coming in. "That's not the same as smoking around him," he said patiently, as though explaining math to a child. I looked at him, trying to understand how the man who once held my hand through storms could now minimize a danger that even pediatricians cautioned against. "It's still harmful, Derek." "Everything is harmful nowadays," he muttered. "People are too sensitive." Before I could respond, Marlene stepped back into the house, waving away the last trail of smoke from her clothes. "Lord have mercy," she said loudly. "What now? This girl complaining again about one little cigarette?" I felt Isaiah shift in my arms, his small breath catching in a way that sent a chill through me. It's not just a cigarette, I said. He's only 6 months old. He shouldn't be inhaling any of it. Oh, please, Marlene scoffed. Back in the day, people smoked everywhere. Hospitals, airplanes, restaurants, and babies grew up just fine. Talia nodded. Exactly. Mom's right. And Derek stood beside them. 3 against 1. I suddenly felt the shape of my isolation, the quiet walls closing in not with noise, but with dismissal, the way my concerns dissolved before reaching anyone's ears. That night, as I bathed Isaiah, I caught a faint smell of smoke in his hair. It was subtle but unmistakable. Something that didn't belong to him. Something foreign and wrong. I washed him gently, as though removing a stain that shouldn't have existed in the first place. When I lifted him from the water, wrapped him in a warm towel, and held him against my chest, a wave of guilt rose in me so strong it almost doubled me over. I whispered to him, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Because I knew, deeply, instinctively, that he should never have been exposed to any of this. And yet, I was the only one who saw it as a problem. The house buzzed with its usual noises that night. Marlene's TV too loud, Talia laughing at something on her phone, Derek typing at his laptop. But in the quiet of my son's room, the truth settled into me like something inevitable. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't hormones. This wasn't sensitivity. This was a warning, a small one, a beginning. And I felt, for the first time, the early stirrings of a line I might have to cross one day, not for myself, but for Isaiah, and for the right to remain his mother. 2 evenings after the smoke incident, Derek's brother dropped off a box of diapers on his way home from work. He lived across town and rarely stopped by, so when he texted Derek to come outside and grab them, Derek insisted we all go out to say hello. It was already dark, and Isaiah had just finished a bottle. I wanted to stay home, keep him in the warm, clean air of his room, but Derek was insistent. It'll be quick, he said. 2 minutes. He's family. Come on. Can't he just hand them to you outside? I asked. Derek shook his head as if I was being unreasonable again. It's not a big deal, Aaliyah. Stop making everything hard. So I bundled Isaiah in a soft blanket, held him close to my chest, and followed Derek out the door. His brother didn't meet us outside like I expected. Instead, he waved for us to come inside, saying he had something else he wanted to give us. The moment the door opened, a wall of stale cigarette smoke poured out, thick and heavy, clinging to the hallway like residue that refused to leave. It hit me in the throat first, a burning, bitter sting. Then my eyes began to water. If I could feel it that strongly, then my baby, pressed against my shoulder, was breathing it too. Derek didn't seem to notice. Come in, he said calmly, stepping inside as if the air wasn't suffocating. I hesitated. Everything in my body said, turn around, go home, protect him. But I didn't want to start a scene. I didn't want to be the dramatic wife, the overprotective mother everyone already said I was. I followed them inside, holding Isaiah tighter, turning my body away from the densest pockets of smoke. We stayed for 45 minutes. 45. I kept glancing down at Isaiah. watching his small face twitch, watching his breath grow shallow in little bursts. My stomach churned. Each inhale he took felt like I was failing him in real time, as though the smoke was slipping into his lungs through my negligence. I told Derek 3 different times that we needed to go. He kept saying, "Just a second," or "We're leaving," but he never moved toward the door. His brother laughed, slapped him on the back, cracked open a beer, and I stood there, trapped in someone else's carelessness. When we finally left, the night air felt clean, almost sharp. Isaiah whimpered in my arms, a small, hoarse sound. I inhaled deeply, then immediately regretted it because the smell clung to me, thick, sour, dirty. It was in my clothes, my hair, even the blanket Isaiah was wrapped in. The second we stepped into our house, I went straight to the bathroom and undressed him. His skin smelled like smoke. His hair, usually sweet with baby lotion, carried a faint burnt odor. My throat tightened with shame. I bathed him slowly, carefully, washing every fold of his tiny body, whispering apologies with each rinse of warm water. When I lifted him from the tub, I couldn't stop myself from smelling him again, checking if the smoke was gone. Even after lotion and clean pajamas, I still imagined I could smell it. It made me sick, sick to my stomach, that I had allowed this to happen. Sick that I hadn't fought harder. Sick that his lungs, small and soft and still learning the world, had been forced to inhale poison because I didn't want to upset anyone. Once he was asleep, I showered, scrubbing my own hair and skin as though that might erase the guilt, too. When I walked into the living room, Derek was sitting on the couch, scrolling on his phone. "You shouldn't have kept us there so long," I said quietly. He didn't look up. "Aaliyah, don't start." "I'm serious. He was breathing all of that. It's not safe." "He's fine," Derek said, as if stating an objective fact. "And you need to stop overreacting." "I'm not overreacting. He's a baby. Smoke is dangerous." He finally looked at me then, his eyes hardening. "My family has smoked for years. We grew up around it. Nothing happened to us." "That doesn't mean it's safe," I said. "Oh my God," he snapped, tossing his phone aside. "This is exactly why Mom said you're impossible to deal with. You're always complaining, always making me look bad in front of them." I stiffened. "I'm trying to protect our son." "No," he said, standing up now, voice rising. "You're trying to control everyone. And I'm tired of it." "Tired of me protecting Isaiah?" I asked, my voice low. "I'm tired," he said sharply, "of you acting like you know everything. And I'm tired of the disrespect toward my mother." I stared at him, stunned. When have I disrespected her? By questioning her, by questioning me, by acting like your way is the only right way. I felt something collapse inside my chest, quietly, like a structure giving way under too much pressure. "So, you're upset with me," I said slowly, "because I didn't want our son breathing smoke." "Yes," he snapped, "because you made a scene. You embarrassed me. You embarrassed my family." The words were so absurd that, for a moment, I wondered if I had misheard him. But his expression didn't change. He believed what he was saying. He meant it. He wasn't defending Isaiah. He was defending them. And he blamed me. Me, the only person trying to shield our baby from harm. That night, after everyone went to bed, I stood in Isaiah's dimly lit room, listening to his breathing. It was slightly congested, not alarming, but different. I ran my hand over his chest, felt his warmth, felt the rise and fall that tethered my entire existence. A mother's instinct is not fragile or dramatic. It is ancient. It is fierce. It is the deepest truth I possess. But here in this house, surrounded by people who saw my fear as an inconvenience, that truth felt like it was being stripped from me, one argument at a time. I looked at my sleeping son and whispered the only promise I knew I could keep. I will not fail you again. And somewhere in the quiet of that promise lay the first shadow of a new fear. One I never wanted to name. If this continued, if Derek continued choosing them over us, if his family continued making decisions that placed Isaiah at risk, I might have to fight for more than safety. I might have to fight for custody. And the thought of that possibility, of having to protect my son from his own father's choices, settled over me like a warning I could no longer ignore. 2 mornings after the visit to Derek's brother's house, I sensed something wrong before I even opened my eyes. Isaiah's breathing had a strange rhythm, tight, uneven, with small, raspy pulls between each inhale. At first, half asleep, I thought it was just congestion from the dry night air. But when I lifted him from the crib, I felt the subtle strain in his body, the way his chest rose faster than usual. He whimpered, not a hungry cry, not discomfort, but something weak, as though the air itself was difficult to catch. Isaiah? I whispered, touching his cheek. His skin felt warmer, then normal. A pulse of fear moved through me. I walked into the living room, holding him close, listening to every uneven breath. Marlene was already at the kitchen counter, stirring her coffee, and Talia scrolled through her phone on the couch. He's breathing weird, I said quietly. Babies breathe weird all the time, Talia replied without looking up. Relax. This is different. Marlene sighed loudly, as though the inconvenience of my worry weighed on her more than Isaiah's struggle. Aaliyah, you're always imagining things. You smother that child. He feels warm, I said. Probably because you're holding him too tight, she snapped. Derek came out of the bedroom then, adjusting his tie. Everything okay? No, I said, turning Isaiah so he could see his small, strained breaths. Something's wrong. He's breathing fast. His chest. Look at it. Derek stepped closer, glanced for half a second, then shrugged. He's fine. Babies get congested. Give him some time. I stared at him, searching his face for concern, for focus, for anything resembling the man who once stayed up all night when Isaiah had a mild fever at 2 months old. That man was gone. I want to call a doctor, I said. Marlene rolled her eyes. You're wasting money. Doctors always exaggerate things. Give him a few hours. No, I said, my voice firmer now. I'm calling. Before anyone could stop me, I walked to the bedroom and dialed a private pediatric clinic. They agreed to send a doctor within the hour. When Dr. Celeste Harmon arrived, her calm, steady presence filled the room like something I had been missing for months. She washed her hands, listened to Isaiah's lungs, checked his oxygen levels, examined his throat, and asked me questions with a seriousness that validated everything I felt. Finally, she looked at me. Not at Derek, not at Marlene, but at me, with a firmness that made my stomach drop. Has Isaiah been exposed to any cigarette smoke recently? My throat tightened. Yes, my mother-in-law smokes on the patio, and we visited a relative's house 2 nights ago. They smoke inside. Dr. Harmon exhaled quietly, her expression sharpening. Your son is showing signs of early obstructive bronchitis. At his age, this is serious. His airways are very small, and smoke exposure, even indirect, can trigger inflammation and respiratory distress. My heart dropped so quickly, it felt physical. I pressed Isaiah closer to me. What do we do? I whispered. You need to eliminate all exposure to smoke immediately, she said. No smoking on the patio, no open doors, no indoor smoke anywhere. Anyone who smokes must stay completely outside the property, wash their hands, and change clothing before holding him. I'm prescribing treatments. If he worsens or doesn't improve in 48 hours, you call an ambulance. Derek cleared his throat. Doctor, is it really that serious? I mean, yes. She cut him off gently but decisively. It is. She left shortly after, but her words stayed suspended in the air like dust particles illuminated by sunlight. Tiny, undeniable truths. The silence in the living room felt heavier than I'd ever felt it. Marlene was the first to speak. So, now it's my fault? She demanded, hand on her hip. I didn't say that, I said. I'm telling you what the doctor— Don't lie, she snapped. You're blaming me for your baby being sick. Me. After I came here to help you. Derek stepped between us, though not to defend me. Aaliyah, you could have handled that better. Handled what? I said, unable to contain the tremor in my voice. She blew smoke inside the house. The doctor said, Oh my God, Talia groaned, tossing her phone down. Nobody said she blew smoke on the baby. You're twisting everything. He shouldn't breathe any smoke at all, I said. Not near him, not inside, not drifting from the patio. It doesn't matter how it gets to him. You're being dramatic again, Derek interrupted, his tone sharp with irritation. You always take things too far. I blinked, stunned. He has bronchitis. Our 6-month-old son has bronchitis from smoke exposure. You don't know that? Derek countered. Maybe he was already getting sick. Maybe it's allergies. You're blaming my family because you don't like them. You heard the doctor, I said. She was very clear. Marlene raised her voice. Doctors blame everything on smoking nowadays. When Derek was born, people smoked in hospital waiting rooms. Babies lived. I felt something inside me tighten, like a rope pulled taut around my lungs. That doesn't make it safe, I whispered. It makes it life, Marlene responded coldly. Derek turned toward me, disappointment etched across his face. Aaliyah, you need to stop attacking my family. This constant negativity, this drama, it's tearing us apart. Tearing us apart? I repeated, disbelief and sorrow rising in equal measure. Your mother endangered our son, and you're worried about your family's feelings? Derek's jaw clenched. You need to calm down. I stared at him, and in that moment, I understood something with a clarity I had been avoiding. He didn't see what I saw. He didn't feel what I felt. He didn't believe the danger was real because he didn't want to. That night, Isaiah hardly slept. His breaths came in shallow bursts, each one sounding like it had to fight its way through something constricting. I held him upright against my chest, administering nebulizer treatments every few hours. I whispered to him, rocked him, prayed for morning. Derek slept on the couch, claiming he needed rest for work. Marlene's door stayed shut. Talia played videos on her phone with the volume low. I walked the hallway alone, the weight of Isaiah's fragile breaths pressed against my heart like a bruise, and I knew deeply, instinctively, that we had crossed into a new territory. This was no longer about respect or boundaries or family dynamics. This was about safety. This was about survival. And somewhere in that dim hallway, holding my struggling son, a quiet but resolute thought began to take shape. If Derek would not protect Isaiah, I would. Even if it meant protecting him from Derek. Isaiah's cough worsened overnight. It wasn't loud, but it had a deep, hollow quality that seemed too heavy for such a small chest to carry. Every few minutes, he let out a short, sharp cry, then buried his face into my shoulder, as though trying to escape whatever was hurting him. His fever rose steadily, each reading on the thermometer creeping higher than the last. When it reached 101.6, a cold dread settled under my skin. By 3 in the morning, I was pacing the hallway in slow, measured steps, holding him upright so he could breathe more easily. His tiny body shook with each cough. His breathing sounded like air trying to move past something swollen and angry. Sweat dampened his curls. His hands clung weakly to the fabric of my shirt. I whispered to him, "I'm here. I'm right here." But the words felt thin, fragile, as though they weren't enough to bridge the space between his suffering and my helplessness. I went to the living room where Derek slept on the couch, sprawled across the cushions as though nothing unusual had invaded the house tonight. "Derek," I said softly at first, "wake up." He didn't move. "Derek," my voice shook. "Please." He groaned, cracked one eye open. "What is it now?" "He's getting worse," I said, holding Isaiah toward him so he could see. "His fever's climbing. His breathing. Listen to him. We might need to take him in." "Give him another treatment," he mumbled. "You're overreacting. Again." "He's struggling," I insisted, my voice rising slightly. "We need to call someone. Maybe the hospital or—" "Call an ambulance then," Derek said, rolling onto his side. "Do whatever you want. I have work in the morning." That sentence, "I have work in the morning," fell on me heavier than anything he had said so far. Not because of the words themselves, but because of what they revealed. That my son's breathing, my panic, the possibility of something catastrophic happening tonight. None of it reached him. None of it pierced whatever wall he had built between us. I said, "Nothing else." I dialed 911 with trembling hands while Isaiah pressed his forehead against my collarbone, whimpering in small, pained breaths. The dispatcher's calm voice felt like a lifeline. "Help is on the way," she said. "Stay with him." The ambulance arrived in less than 15 minutes, lights flashing silently, the red glow sweeping across the living room walls. Derek didn't get up. Marlene's door didn't open. Talia didn't ask a single question. I stepped outside with the paramedics, the cool early morning air brushing against Isaiah's fevered skin. They placed a small oxygen mask near his face, monitored his breathing, and looked at each other with an expression I recognized. Concern hidden behind professionalism. "He needs to be evaluated at the hospital," one of them said. "I know," I whispered. "Please." Inside the ambulance, I held Isaiah close while they monitored his oxygen levels. My heart pounded in my ears. Every bump in the road felt amplified. I pressed my lips to the top of his head, inhaling the faint trace of smoke still embedded in his curls despite all the washing. As we arrived at the hospital, I felt a strange mix of fear and resolve hardening in my chest. The glass doors slid open, releasing cold air that smelled of disinfectant and fluorescent light. Nurses took him from my arms, placing him gently in a small pediatric bed in an isolation room. They moved quickly. Oxygen tubing, monitors, nebulizer treatments, IV fluids. I stood beside him, my hands gripping the railing, feeling utterly powerless. Hours passed in a slow, suspended haze. Doctors came and went. Machines beeped rhythmically. Isaiah drifted in and out of sleep, occasionally crying in pain, each sound carving another hollow space in me. Derek finally arrived around noon, looking disheveled and concerned, though the concern felt shallow, more for show than anything. He stood at the foot of the bed, hands in his pockets. "What did the doctor say?" he asked. "He has obstructive bronchitis," I said quietly. "They think smoke aggravated it." If it had gone on any longer, my voice cracked, so I swallowed. Derek's expression tightened. "Mom's really upset," he said. "She thinks you blame her." I stared at him in disbelief. "Derek, our son can barely breathe, and your concern is how your mother feels?" "She didn't mean any harm," he said. "You know she didn't." "That doesn't undo what happened. Intent does not erase consequences." He rubbed his forehead. "Aaliyah, please don't make this harder. Mom said she'd try to smoke outside more carefully. She feels terrible." "She doesn't feel terrible," I said softly. "She feels inconvenienced." He exhaled sharply. "See? This is what I'm talking about. You're treating her like a villain." I looked at him for a long moment, long enough to see the distance that had grown between us. The way he had chosen his side long before he realized there was even a line to choose. "I'm treating her like someone who put our son in danger," I said finally. He didn't answer. After a few minutes, he left the room to take a call, though I sensed he simply wanted to escape the discomfort of facing the truth. That night, I sat in a plastic chair beside Isaiah's bed, listening to the hiss of the oxygen, the soft beep of the monitors, and the labored breaths of my child. Outside the window, Houston's lights glowed through a thin layer of rain, blurred like distant memories. Alone in that dim hospital room, I felt something inside me crystallize. A clarity I had resisted, a truth I had tried to deny. I was alone in this fight, not metaphorically, not emotionally, truly, completely alone. And if I didn't draw a line soon, If I kept allowing Derek and his family to dictate what normal was, Isaiah would be the one to pay for it. I brushed my fingers across Isaiah's forehead, lowering my voice so only he and the whir of the machines could hear. I won't let this happen again. I don't care what it costs. I don't care who I lose. I will protect you. The beeping monitors echoed softly in response, steady and fragile. And though I didn't want to think it, not yet, not fully, I felt the quiet beginnings of a realization forming like a storm far on the horizon. To protect my son, I might have to leave my marriage, and I might have to fight for the right to keep him. Custody. The word sat in my mind like a shadow, waiting for its moment. Isaiah was discharged 5 days later. His cough had improved. His fever had finally dropped, and the monitor no longer registered the worrisome dips it had shown during the first 2 nights. When a nurse placed him gently into my arms and told me we could go home, I felt both relief and dread coil together inside me. Home no longer meant safety. Home meant walking back into a house where no one had listened, where concern for a baby's lungs was treated like an inconvenience, where I had been dismissed until a doctor's diagnosis forced silence into their throats. As we approached the townhouse, a tightness pressed against my ribs. I could already imagine Marlene's exaggerated apologies, Talia's whispered judgments, Derek's rationalizations. I wasn't wrong for feeling reluctant. I had learned the hard way that some houses demanded more of you than they returning. Marlene opened the door before Derek even inserted the key. "My baby boy!" she cried, reaching for Isaiah with arms outstretched. "Oh, Grandma missed you so much." I stepped back without thinking, not aggressively, just enough that her hands met empty air. She froze, surprise flickering into offense. "He just got over bronchitis," I said softly. "Let me get him settled first." She widened her eyes as if I had slapped her. "Aaliyah, I was only trying to hold him." "I know," I replied calmly, "but he needs time." Talia stepped forward, her voice low and cold. "Wow, she really thinks we're the enemy." I ignored her and carried Isaiah inside. The house smelled faintly of air freshener. Someone had attempted to cover up the lingering smoke, but beneath it, that odor still lived stubbornly in the walls, like a memory that refused to leave. I walked Isaiah to his room, gently set him down, and watched him sleep for a moment. When I returned to the living room, Derek was standing with his arms crossed, his posture tense and coiled. "What was that about?" he demanded. "What? You pulling away from my mom like that? She's been worried sick." I breathed in slowly. "She doesn't wash her hands after smoking. She holds him without changing clothes. The doctor said—" Derek cut me off. "The doctor exaggerated." My eyes met his, and for the first time since Isaiah was born, I saw something unmistakably cold in him, an impatience that had been building for months, a resentment he no longer cared to hide. "Derek," I said quietly. Isaiah could barely breathe. He was hooked up to oxygen. They were worried he could develop pneumonia. How is that exaggerating? "You just want someone to blame," he snapped. "And it's always my family." Marlene chimed in from behind him. "She's been poisoning him with paranoia since day one." I turned my head slowly, staring at her. "The doctor said smoke caused his condition." Marlene scoffed. "Doctors say a lot of things these days. When Derek was a baby, people smoked in the hospital cafeteria, and he turned out just fine. I didn't respond. I didn't trust my voice not to break. Instead, I walked to the kitchen, needing a moment, any moment, to catch my breath. But Derek followed. "You need to stop this," he said, blocking the entryway. "You're creating division in this family." "Division?" I echoed. "I'm trying to keep our son healthy." "You're overreacting. You always do." I felt something shift inside me, a slow but steady collapse of a foundation I had been trying desperately to hold together. "When are you going to listen to me?" I asked. "When you stop attacking my mother," he answered. The sentence landed like a blade, not because of what it said, but because of what it revealed. He wasn't going to choose his son. He wasn't going to choose me. He had already chosen them. Behind him, Talia stood with her arms folded, her voice dripping with something acidic. "Maybe if you weren't so controlling all the time, things wouldn't be like this." I looked from one face to another. The man I married, the woman who raised him, the sister who had made a sport of undermining me. And I saw not family, but a wall, a unified front, a fortress built of shared denial and stubbornness. There was no space for my voice in that room. There never had been. "I'm taking Isaiah to my mother's for a few days," I said quietly. Derek's expression changed instantly, tension sharp enough to cut. "No, you're not." "I need space," I said. "And Isaiah needs a smoke-free environment." "The doctor?" "Stop using the doctor as an excuse," he snapped. "You're not going anywhere." I stared at him, at the way he positioned himself in the doorway, shoulders wide, stance rigid. Something in the atmosphere shifted, a subtle but unmistakable tightening. Talia smirked. "She thinks she can just walk out with our family's child." Our family's child. The phrasing hit me like ice water. My heart beat faster, not from fear, but from recognition. They didn't see Isaiah as mine. They saw him as theirs, their bloodline, their right. I was the outsider, the temporary vessel, the woman they tolerated as long as I stayed quiet. Marlene stepped forward then, her tone dangerously calm. "You take that boy anywhere without Derek's permission, and you'll regret it." I felt the threat beneath her words. Not violent, but legal. Custody, authority, power. Derek added, "If you walk out that door with him, you're taking him away from his family, and I won't let that happen." I straightened slowly. "So you're saying I can't take him to a safe place?" "I'm saying," he replied, "that you don't get to decide things on your own. Not anymore." There it was, the shift from husband to opponent, from partner to adversary. The man who once promised to protect our family now stood between me and the only safety my son had left. I felt a stillness move through me, calm, cold, resolute. "I'm not doing this with you right now," I said. "Not in front of Isaiah, but I will do what's necessary." Derek laughed once, a short, humorless sound. "Necessary? You can barely take care of yourself these days. How do you expect to take care of a baby alone?" Marlene added softly, almost sweetly. "If it ever came to custody, dear, you wouldn't stand a chance." Talia leaned in, arms folded. "Courts look at stability, and you're not." Their confidence wasn't loud, It was methodical, rehearsed, as though they had already discussed this possibility among themselves, as though they had already envisioned a version of Isaiah's life where I wasn't the one holding him. I felt a tremor run through me, not from fear, but from clarity. They believed I was powerless. They believed I would fold. They believed I didn't know my rights, but they were wrong. I looked Derek in the eyes and said slowly, "A mother who protects her child is never unstable." And though no one in the room understood it yet, not Derek, not Marlene, not Talia, I had already taken the first step towards something irreversible. I was done pleading, done explaining, done bending. The line had been drawn, and soon I would cross it. That night, the house felt colder than usual, as though the walls had absorbed the earlier confrontation and were now exhaling it back into the air. Isaiah slept fitfully, letting out small coughs that made my chest tighten each time. I sat beside his crib for a long time, watching the slow rise and fall of his chest, touching his hair every so often, just to reassure myself that he was still warm, still breathing, still here. I wanted to leave. Every instinct inside me urged me to take him and go. But Derek's warning echoed faintly. You don't get to decide things on your own. It wasn't just a controlling statement. It was a threat wrapped in authority, a hint that he believed he had more right to our son than I did. And that scared me more than anything else. Shortly after midnight, I walked into the hallway to get a bottle of water from the kitchen. The house was quiet, except for the faint sound of the television coming from Derek's parents' room. I moved slowly, trying not to disturb anyone, though deep down, I no longer feared being heard. The days of tiptoeing were almost over. As I passed the living room, I noticed a thin trail of smoky scent. Faint, but unmistakable. My muscles tightened instantly. I followed the smell toward the kitchen and froze. The back patio door was cracked open. No, not after everything. Not after the hospital. Not after the doctor's orders. Not after nearly losing my son's breath. I stepped closer. Through the narrow gap, I saw a sliver of movement. Marlene, hunched near the railing, a glowing orange ember cupped in her hand. She exhaled a stream of smoke that drifted straight toward the opening. Every ounce of patience I had tried to maintain evaporated. "Marlene," I said, pushing the door open. "What are you doing?" She didn't even flinch. She simply looked at me over her shoulder, her expression flat and indifferent, as though she had been expecting this. "Having a cigarette," she said. "You're not supposed to smoke anywhere near the house. The doctor—" "Oh, stop with the doctor," she interrupted, waving her cigarette dismissively. "You exaggerate everything. One puff isn't going to hurt anyone." "You almost sent Isaiah to the ICU," I said quietly, but my voice trembled with contained rage. "Do you understand that?" "He's fine now," she replied, shrugging. "You act like the world is ending. Babies get sick. It happens." "He didn't get sick," I said. "He was poisoned." Her eyes narrowed. "Watch your words." I took a step outside, the cold air brushing against my skin, like a reminder that the night held more weight than usual. "Close the door. Right now." Marlene took a long drag, exhaled slowly, and blew the smoke deliberately, intentionally, toward the doorway, toward me, toward the space where my son slept. Something dark flickered inside me. Her voice changed, lowering into something almost venomous. You think you're better than us. You think you're some perfect mother. But you're weak, Aaliyah. A woman who can't control her emotions doesn't deserve to control a household. I don't want to control anything, I said. I just want my son safe. Your son, she repeated slowly as though tasting the words. He's a Monroe, our blood, not just yours. And there it was, the truth she had been holding since the day she arrived. A claim, a possession, a stake in a child who had grown inside my body, who breathed through me before he breathed on his own. When I turned to close the door myself, I heard a voice behind me. What the hell is going on out here? Derek stood in the doorway, his voice thick with irritation, hair tousled as though he had just woken up. His eyes flicked from me to his mother, then back to me, already choosing his side. She's accusing me again, Marlene said innocently. I asked her to stop smoking near the house, I said. That's it. That's it? Derek repeated, stepping closer. Why are you out here yelling in the middle of the night? You're waking everyone up. I'm not yelling, I said quietly, but your mother is ignoring every boundary. My mother, Derek snapped, has been nothing but helpful since she got here. A laugh escaped me, a sharp, breathless sound I didn't recognize as my own. Helpful? Isaiah almost ended up in the hospital because of her. Don't start, he warned. I'm not starting, I said. I'm protecting our son. That's the problem, Derek said, his voice rising. You think you're the only one who cares about him. You act like you're the only parent who knows anything. You haven't listened to me once, I said. Not once. Because you don't make sense, he exploded. You've been unstable for months, Aaliyah. You twist every little thing into some crisis. Unstable? I repeated. Cold now. Recognizing danger isn't unstable. Caring about his lungs isn't unstable. Calling 911 when he couldn't breathe wasn't unstable. He didn't answer. Behind him, Talia had stepped into the doorway, arms crossed, wearing the same expression she had worn since the moment she arrived. Judgment mixed with triumph, as though she wanted me to fail. You need help, she murmured. Real help. You're spiraling. Marlene nodded slowly. If this continues, Derek, you'll have to think about what's best for the baby. My blood went cold. What is that supposed to mean? I asked. Derek wouldn't meet my eyes now. She means maybe Isaiah shouldn't be around so much stress. Stress, not smoke, not negligence, not danger. Me. I was the problem now. Something inside me snapped. Not loudly, but quietly, like a thread pulled too tight, finally giving way. You're not taking him from me, I said softly, each word steady as stone. Derek stepped forward. If you keep acting like this, I won't have a choice. My heart stilled. His face was inches from mine now, his tone low and dangerous. Don't push me, Aaliyah. I'm serious. I felt the echo of the slap that would come later. Not yet, but close, hovering in the air like something inevitable. For the first time, I saw clearly what I was up against. Not a misunderstanding, not a disagreement, a challenge, a warning, a threat. When I spoke, my voice was calm, almost soft. "Then we're done here." He blinked. "What?" "You heard me," I said. "Whatever this marriage was, it's finished." The patio light flickered briefly, cutting shadows across his face. "You can't leave," he said slowly. "Not with him." But I no longer felt the fear he wanted me to feel. "You don't get to tell me what I can do," I replied. "Not anymore." Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed the faint glow of Marlene's phone screen. She was recording. Not openly, not obviously, but enough that I understood she was preparing her own version of events. That was fine. Let them record. Let them collect their lies. Because I had already begun collecting the truth. And very soon, they would understand exactly what it meant when a mother chooses to fight back. Not with anger, not with shouting, but with evidence, law, and the unshakable certainty that her child is worth everything, even war. "Shut your damn mouth! Who do you think you are to talk to my mother like that?" The words came first, hot, sharp, slicing through the kitchen air. Then came the slap. Derek's hand struck my face with such force that for a moment I saw only light, only the brightness of shock filling my vision like a flashbulb. My shoulder hit the edge of the counter as I stumbled back. I didn't fall, but the world tilted, the floor shifting beneath my feet as though trying to warn me of something I already knew. Behind him, Marlene stood with a satisfied smirk on her face, her arms folded, her eyes gleaming with triumph. Talia watched like a spectator, at a show she'd been waiting months to see. But what happened 15 minutes later was nothing they expected. Isaiah's cry came from the hallway, a sharp, panicked sound, thin and trembling. It cut through the house with a purity that demanded attention. I didn't wait for permission. I pushed past Derek and ran to him, scooping him into my arms. His cheeks were warm. His breath had that faint, fast flutter I had learned to dread. Something ancient inside me rose, calm, fierce, absolute. I whispered into his hair, "It's okay. I'm here. I've got you." When I turned back toward the living room, Derek stood there breathing hard, his anger beginning to fade into something else. Uncertainty, maybe fear, maybe the first recognition that he had gone too far. "You did that," he said, pointing at Isaiah. "You're stressing him out." I did not answer, not because I didn't have words, but because I finally understood they were meaningless in this house. I walked quietly into the bedroom, shut the door behind me, and reached into the back of the closet where I had hidden something days ago. A small, discreet camera, no bigger than a thumb. I held it in my hand for a moment, feeling its weight, its promise. I had known this day would come. Now it was here. I opened my laptop, inserted the memory card, and cued the recordings. There it was. Marlene chain-smoking on the patio, blowing smoke toward the open door. There she was, vaping in her room late at night, exhaling clouds through the cracked window. There were the ash-covered mugs she hid. And then the recordings of her phone calls, every cruel word, every plan to put me in my place, every threat disguised as concern. But the most important footage was the last file. Derek stepping toward me in the kitchen, shouting, raising his hand, striking me. All of it captured clearly. I downloaded every file onto a flash drive, made a second copy, emailed a third to myself, and stored it in the cloud. Then I called someone. Renee Carter answered on the third ring. Her voice was calm, steady, practiced. The voice of a woman accustomed to navigating storms. "Miss Monroe," she said, "I've been expecting your call. You said things were escalating." "Yes," I said quietly. "Tonight, he hit me." A pause. Not of surprise, of calculation. "Do you have evidence?" "Yes." "And the baby? Is he safe with you right now?" "He's with me." "Good," she said. "Listen carefully. You need to stay where you are for now. Do not leave the house with him until I arrive, unless you feel physically threatened. If Derek or his family attempts anything, call 911 immediately. I'm on my way." I had never felt more alone. And yet, for the first time in months, I felt understood. 15 minutes passed. Renee arrived, small, composed, eyes sharp as glass. She stepped into the living room like she had every right to be there, which, in a way, she did. She introduced herself with a voice that left no room for argument. "I'm Attorney Carter. I'm here on behalf of Aaliyah." Derek scoffed. "On whose authority?" "On mine," she said, flashing her credentials, "and on the state of Texas, which takes domestic violence and child endangerment extremely seriously." Marlene stepped forward. "This is ridiculous. She provoked him, and she's trying to steal our baby." Renee lifted a single finger. The room quieted. "Mrs. Monroe," she said, "I have seen the recordings." The color drained from Marlene's face. Talia shifted uncomfortably, glancing at Derek. Renee continued, her words smooth but cold, like a scalpel slicing through the last thread of their confidence. "What I saw was repeated smoking near an infant, vaping inside the home, intentional exposure to secondhand smoke, and verbal harassment toward the child's mother. Under Texas Family Code, that alone is grounds for restricted visitation. Add in the physical assault I watched, clear as day. And we are not discussing visitation anymore. We're discussing custody." Derek's jaw tightened. "You can't just take my son." Renee smiled, not kindly, not cruelly, simply with certainty. "I'm not taking your son. The court will decide what arrangement keeps him safest. And based on this evidence, it won't be you." He stepped toward her. "You think a judge will believe all that?" "I don't need them to believe it," she replied, holding up the flash drive. "I only need them to watch it." Silence washed over the room, thick and suffocating. For the first time, Derek looked genuinely afraid of consequences, of losing control, of losing everything he took for granted. Then Renee turned to me. "Aaliyah," she said gently, "pack a bag. I'll escort you and Isaiah out. You're going to stay somewhere safe tonight." Derek erupted. "You can't take him. He's my son." "He's a child," Renee said, her tone unchanged. "A child who needs clean air and a mother who protects him." As I packed Isaiah's diaper bag, my hands trembled, not from fear, but from the weight of choosing myself, choosing him, choosing a future where his lungs would never again fight for air because someone refused to care. When we stepped out of the house, Derek rushed after us. "Aaliyah, don't do this! Don't leave!" I turned slowly. "You left first," I said. "You left the moment you stopped listening." His face crumpled. Anger, confusion, regret, blending into something wordless. Renee guided me into her car. "You're doing the right thing," she said, once Isaiah was buckled safely beside me. I looked back at the townhouse, at the dim patio light, at the curtains moving in the window, at the shadow of the family that had tried to break me. Maybe they had succeeded in breaking something, but not the thing they intended. They had broken my silence. They had broken my tolerance. They had broken the part of me that still believed I could fix a house built on smoke. As we drove away, Isaiah stirred, pressing his face into my chest. I held him gently, whispering into the softness of his hair. "We're safe now," I murmured. "I'll fight for you, for us, I promise." The city lights blurred past the window, Houston glowing quietly in the distance, a promise of something new. Something ours, something clean.